Hi, welcome. Okay, to start with, just to warn you, this is not going to be an unbiased review of the JonBenet murder case. Everyone knows who killed JonBenet. I know it, everybody knows it. And I just want to highlight these facts to everyone. Only because recently on Netflix you might have seen that there was a documentary which was clearly heavily influenced by John Ramsey himself, because the whole documentary left out so much evidence which highlights that the only cause of her death had to have been the Ramseys themselves. And added to that, there's a film coming out, a dramatisation of JonBenet's murder, which is also being involved in by John Ramsey. So the whole film is going to be highlighting their innocence and completely ignoring all the evidence to the contrary. So at this point, I figure the most videos out there exposing them, the better. Okay, so I'm not going to start from the very beginning and reintroduce JonBenet, who she was, what happened, because there's so many videos out there. You must already know the basics. But basically, she was a child who was found dead on Christmas morning, apparently by the parents. Okay, now the parents have always maintained their innocence and saying that an intruder broke into the house and killed her. But that is clearly a complete lie. So to highlight how that's a lie, I'm actually going to run through the sequence of events as according to the Ramseys, which is their plea for the case of an intruder coming in. And I'm just going to highlight how it's all complete nonsense, so everyone can see it had to have been the Ramseys themselves. Okay, so first of all, on Christmas night, the entire house was covered in snow outside. All of the grounds, it was all snow. Yet they're saying that an intruder entered and left the property, but not a single footprint was found leading to or from the house. So that's the first point. They're trying to explain to us that, or trying to make us believe, that an intruder on a heavily snowy night managed to get in and out of the house without leaving a single trace. So unless he flew in, it's not going to happen. Secondly, there was no sign of any forced entry into the house. The only possibility, there was one open window in the basement. But as you can see from all the evidence photos of that window, there was undisturbed spider webs, dust, debris, all still intact. Nothing had moved. It was only a small window. So anyone, particularly a grown-up, squeezing through that window would certainly have messed it up. It wouldn't be as undisturbed as it was. Which then leads us on to the next point, that the intruder then comes into the house and spends an extended period of time inside the house doing all kinds of things. Which, first of all, if you're going in to kidnap someone, you'd get in, you'd grab the victim, and you'd be gone straight away. Now, this intruder managed to apparently get into the Ramseys' house without setting off their security system. Now, the Ramseys had a very intelligent security system, but no alarms were triggered, no sensors went off. It's ridiculous. I mean, he must have been an expert cat burglar. And then curiously, even if you look at the window that the Ramseys say that he entered through, it was so small and so awkward that it'd be very difficult for anyone to climb in and out of. If you were kidnapping someone, particularly a small child, there's no way that you could have got out of that window and taken a child out of that window as well without that child making a noise or at least running off or something. So to make us believe that would have been the way in and out for a kidnapper is complete nonsense. Okay, so then we get onto the ransom note, and this is the point that really gets to me. This person apparently came to the Ramseys' house to kidnap JonBenet Ramsey and leave a ransom note. But the kidnapper didn't bring a ransom note with him. So he wrote the ransom note in the house. And not just writing a note, but he did multiple drafts. There were practice notes found where he was writing the perfect note. I mean, what disorganized kidnapper goes in to kidnap someone but forgets the ransom note? And this is a point that really gets to me, is the fact that he used Patsy Ramsey's stationery to write the ransom note. He used her pen. But then after he wrote the ransom note, he put the pen back where it belongs. Now that's something that you do in your own house. If you go and grab a pen to write something, you know where you keep your pens, particularly your pen. And after you've used it, you put it back where it goes. An intruder in the house, a kidnapper, isn't going to bother putting it back. He's not going to have that muscle memory of putting the pen back where it belongs. So for me, that's a huge alarm bell that note was written by someone in the house. They knew where that pen was, and then they automatically knew to put that pen back where it was, because everyone gets annoyed when they go to get their pen and someone's moved it. Then we've got the interactions with JonBenet. So the Ramseys say that when they got home from their party on Christmas Eve, that JonBenet was asleep in the car, and they carried her up to bed. She went straight to bed, asleep. They went straight to bed. Everyone's asleep straight away after this party. And that's what they maintain. Now, in the autopsy of JonBenet, they found undigested pineapple in her stomach, which means that she had eaten pineapple before bed. Okay, now the bowl of pineapple was actually found in the kitchen with Burke and Patsy Ramsey's fingerprints all over the bowl. Now the Ramseys still maintain that they did not give her any pineapple, which is a really weird thing to be lying about, because it doesn't really make any difference. But it's just another little lie that the Ramseys have told, which just destroys all credibility that they've ever had. Not that they really had any on there. And so the Ramseys themselves have actually said that whoever tried to abduct JonBenet must have brought pineapple with them. And this was fresh pineapple. It wasn't even out of a tin. Now, who's prepared pineapple to eat from a fresh pineapple? It's not easy. It's a real faff. Get a knife, you got to cut the tops off, you got to cut the skin off, you got to cut it up into reasonable chunks. It's not a quick and easy snack to prepare. Not from a fresh pineapple. Yet this kidnapper came into the house prepared and brought a fresh pineapple with him. And then he got his kidnapped victim, obviously woke her up, and then gave her a bowl of pineapple. Presumably he gave that to her while he was writing the ransom note. Now, what child woken up in the middle of the night by apparently an intruder would then just happily sit and eat a bowl of pineapple they prepared for them? I mean, there's just no urgency with this kidnapper. Then it gets even weirder, because this kidnapper has come to the house with this plan of kidnapping JonBenet, bringing a fresh pineapple for her to eat as well, so that she has something to do while he writes the ransom note. But then he kills JonBenet. Now, why would he kill his kidnap victim? And the weapon he used, he made a garrote that was made from Patsy's paintbrush handles. So he's come into the house, he's woken up JonBenet, he's prepared some fresh pineapple that he brought with him. He's sat down, he's done a few drafts of the ransom note until he's found one he's happy with. He's cleared up the stationery, put the pen back, and then he's sat down and constructed a murder weapon, a garrote. So he's went round, he's found paintbrushes that belong to Patsy, he's broken them, he's got some rope, and he's sat there constructing the murder weapon. And then he kills her. So what's the point? There was no signs of any external sexual assault on JonBenet, so you can rule out that kind of intruder. But the fact he can you imagine a kidnapper just coming in and sitting there and constructing the murder weapon? It's ridiculous that they expect people to believe it. And then when he's leaving the house, he leaves the body in the basement, and he leaves the ransom note as well. So what kind of kidnapper would come in, go to all that trouble of writing the ransom note, then to the trouble of killing the victim, and then leaving the body and the ransom note? I mean, even if you were kidnapping someone and you left a ransom note, and then something happened and you accidentally killed the victim, you would do one of two things. You would either take the dead body with you, so then you can still try and get the ransom money, or you would leave the body and then take the ransom note back. You wouldn't leave the dead body and the ransom note. That makes absolutely no sense. So this apparent intruder has done all of this without being heard or seen, and not left any physical evidence of any forced entry or exit. Okay, none of the Ramseys woke up. No doors are found open. No footprints were left outside. The only way in and out the house was completely undisturbed. So we've got this supposed intruder who entered without a trace and left without a trace, spent an inexplicably long time in the house writing and revising ransom notes, interacted with JonBenet in a way that suggests that really only someone that JonBenet really knew and trusted could interact with her, and then left without taking her or the ransom note. So, and these are not all points that other people have sort of made up. This is the account that the Ramseys gave themselves, and they expect people to believe. You can just tell they were just making it up as they went along. Because even their account of the night before, as told by the Ramseys, that they were at a Christmas party at their friends, the Whites. So they came home from the Whites' house about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And they claimed that JonBenet was fast asleep, so they took her straight upstairs and went to bed. Okay? Now, we already know that can't be true, because JonBenet had been eating pineapple the night before. And the time suggests from the autopsy that it was when they got home. It was that undigested. So why lie? I mean, even tell she and say she was a bit awake, so we gave her a snack before bed. Why lie about it? It makes absolutely no sense. But then they expect us to believe that the intruder came in and made us some pineapple. So then, the next morning, Patsy wakes up about 5:30 in the morning, and she goes downstairs and finds the ransom note on the stairs. Okay. She doesn't go and check JonBenet's room, but she immediately calls 911. Well, not immediately. She says she woke up at 5:30, and then she says, and then the 911 call was at 5:52 a.m. Okay. Which again, by the way, the ransom note specifically warned that if they called the police, JonBenet would be killed. But JonBenet still called. Okay. Now, another thing that I find really strange is that when the police arrived, both John and Patsy were wearing the same evening clothes from the night before, and Patsy was still wearing full makeup. So all of her makeup is still on, and they're still in their glamour clothes. And they're saying that they woke up when they woke up at 5:30, for some inexplicable reason, they just put on the glad rags from the night before. That That doesn't make sense. I mean, generally, as soon as you get home from a party, the first thing you do is you get comfortable. It's been late night, you've been at a party, eating, drinking, having fun. You get home, you take off your nice clothes, and you put on your casual laying around at home clothes. Even if it's just half an hour before you go to bed, where you have a quick nightcap or a quick unwind before you go to sleep. But if you wake up in the middle of the night, or even in the morning, you just grab some old clothes. You don't put your suit back on. You don't put your evening gown back on. So I don't believe for a second that they did that. They had to have been awake all night. I don't believe for a second they went to bed because of that reason. Okay, they had to have been awake all night, which to me says that they staged their morning discovery. And even at the same time, when they were phoning the police, they phoned their friends and invited all their friends round. Now, doesn't that seem a bit strange to everyone else? And I get wanting a bit of moral support, but phoning all their friends and getting all their friends round. So where you think is a crime scene, you've got all your friends coming round, completely messing everything up. Then we get to the ransom note. The ransom note said that the kidnapper would call at 10 a.m. to arrange the ransom exchange. Okay? So, as a parent, you think someone's got your child, and the kidnapper is saying, right, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'll give you a call and I'll explain how we're going to exchange and how you're going to get your child back. So, obviously, any normal parent at that point is going to be glued to the phone. You're going to be waiting for that kidnapper to call and say, I've got your child is safe, this is how you're going to get them back. But 10 a.m. comes and goes, and the Ramseys didn't even notice. Okay? Like, at 10 a.m., John was apparently searching the house, just in case, and Patsy was busy being a hostess to all her friends that had come round. According to the detective, John was also just going through general bits of mail and, pottering around the house and apparently searching the house, as I say. But at 10 a.m., they didn't even notice. They forgot. So, to me, that highlights that was a lie that was in the note that they wrote, and it was a lie they forgot to remember. Because obviously they'd been up all night, they'd been writing several drafts of this ransom note, and they forgot what they put in there, and they forgot that 10 a.m. was a time that they should have been waiting for. They forgot because they knew there wasn't going to be a call. So then, at about 1 p.m., the detective tells John Ramsey and Fleet White, his friend that he was at the party with the night before, to search the house. Just in case. Now, bear in mind, John's been searching the house all day, apparently. So, his friend Fleet starts searching the house upstairs. John heads straight to the basement, and he finds JonBenet behind a door that police hadn't opened. So her body was hidden down there behind a door. He picks up her body and he carries it upstairs and places it under the Christmas tree. Now, it's strange that the basement had already been searched, yet John goes directly to the correct room and the correct hiding place. As soon as he finds her body, he removed duct tape from her mouth and he untied her wrists, disturbing all the evidence, and picks her up and carries her upstairs. Now, in a normal situation, a parent finding their child, I think you would generally just collapse in grief, or you'd freeze in shock. You'd be screaming, you'd be shouting for help. At most, I think you would fall to the floor with the child and hold her in your arms. But you'd be so overcome with kind of relief, I think, at finding your child, which at first you thought was with God knows who. But then that actual grief of realizing there was something wrong and that she was dead. I think that's the normal. Not picking her up and carrying upstairs and untying her, and that just wouldn't come in those first few seconds. Now, if the intruder had hid the body, why wasn't that mentioned in the note? Because a kidnapper would have taken her alive for the ransom. And like I said earlier, even if he had accidentally killed her, which obviously wasn't an accident, he took the time to construct a garrote to kill her with. If he'd accidentally killed her, though, you'd still take the body with you because you want to keep the illusion alive that JonBenet's alive. So give me the money, and I'll give you back your child. And then that's the other thing. They claim that Burke was asleep all night, and he didn't know anything about any of this until the morning when he was woken up by the commotion of the police coming in. And even Burke himself, he said, didn't know anything until he woke up and saw the police shining a torch into the room, and then he woke up and came up. But when Patsy called 911 at 5:52 in the morning, at the end of the call, she thinks she hung up the phone, but the line is still open, and there's some background audio which has been captured, which you can find in most places. It's quite a popularly listened to piece of evidence, and you can hear the voice of Burke in the background. And then you can hear John Ramsey say, "We're not talking to you," as if dismissing Burke. So why would you deny his presence if he was awake? I mean, first of all, if you wake up in the night or in the morning and you find that your youngest child has been kidnapped and there's a ransom note, you're going to be screaming, you're going to be shouting. That's going to wake up the other children. That's going to wake up everyone in the house. That's probably going to wake up the neighbors. The amount of screaming and shouting you're going to do at the panic thinking that your child has been kidnapped is ridiculous. Apparently, he slept through that. Now, that's not true. So why would they lie about Burke being asleep? Well, the answer is simple. It's because then no one's going to question Burke about what happened. And Burke doesn't have to remember any lies. He doesn't have to remember a story. All he has to do when asked anything about that night is, I don't know, I was asleep. And the fact that they had him apparently only wake up when the police arrived means that he doesn't know anything more than the police do. He can't tell them what was happening before the police arrived. He can't tell them anything about the night before. So there's no point in questioning him. And nobody has any reason to question him. That's why they've lied about Burke being asleep. It's a good idea, particularly with a child. That's generally always going to be the weak link, isn't it? If you give a 9-year-old a load of lies to tell, they're going to slip up pretty easy, especially under cross-examination. But if the child's just got to sit there and say, no, I was asleep. But then if you find in other videos, there's videos of Burke being interviewed by the police, and it's really weird. I mean, that kid's a proper little sociopath. It's really, really strange. He's almost playing with the detective that's asking him questions. He's toying with him. It's quite disturbing to watch to come from a 9-year-old. But then, now if you look at John and Patsy's general behaviour that day, okay. Now they wake up and they find their child has been kidnapped and they've got a ransom note. So they call their friends, obviously. Then they call the police. The police come round and start their investigation. And the Ramseys refuse to cooperate with the police. At first they're refusing to answer any questions. They won't help them. The police have come around saying, "Okay, right, we're here to help. Tell us everything," and the Ramseys just shut down. And they won't tell them anything. And the Ramseys actually call their lawyer. That is really weird. If my child was kidnapped, I'd get the police round straight away, and I would be explaining to the police. I'd be telling the police everything they wanted to know. I'd be telling them everything they wanted to know, and I would be wanting them out there with a massive manhunt, shutting up roads, stopping traffic, shutting airports. You'd go the full works, wouldn't you? You'd want the police to know everything that you knew. And then the Ramseys, instead of staying with the police officers, they left their home and went to stay with friends. That's even weirder because, particularly at this time, you're going to want to be around the police. None of that makes sense. I there's no other way to put it, is there? And then they make public statements about an intruder before the police even talk to them about it. You don't shut down completely and lawyer up as soon as something like this happens in a real kidnapping. But straight away, their focus went to defending themselves rather than seeking any sort of justice for JonBenet. You would be, if you genuinely thought it was an intruder, you would be demanding an immediate manhunt instead of avoiding police questioning. And then they went on TV and gave interviews on TV shows before they had their police interviews. The police were still waiting to have interviews with them, and they were on TV giving interviews. I mean, isn't that weird? So if the intruder theory was true, the events just don't make sense. The ransom note promised a call, but they ignored it. They completely forgot they were due a call from the kidnapper. They were already dressed from the night before, which just shows that their whole timeline of their events was complete rubbish. John immediately finds a body, moving it and contaminating the evidence. And they just didn't act like parents of a kidnapped child. They were just avoiding police scrutiny. This whole crime scene just had to have been staged. Even now, today, there are certain bits of evidence, such as there was a hair that was found in the blanket that was wrapped up JonBenet, and the FBI are saying, okay, we're going to analyze this hair and see exactly who it came from, and the Ramseys are saying, no, we're not going to let you do that unless we're in the room when you're doing the analysis. To which you can't. When you're doing something like that, you can't have other people in the room. So that hair's never been analysed, and it's still waiting to be, but the Ramseys are still standing in the way. And they're doing that purely so that the Ramseys can go around saying, oh, there's all this evidence, there's hairs, there's all these other things, it's not been analysed, these all must belong to the intruder. And they're stopping the analysis being done so that they can throw that out to people and make people think that there is the chance that there was an intruder. And there wasn't. I think it's just clear that the Ramseys went to a huge amount of trouble to try and stage a crime scene to make it look like a kidnapping had gone wrong. But when you look at everything that they've told us, everything the Ramseys said and did and said happened, absolutely none of it makes sense. None of it can possibly be true. So like I say, even though there's hundreds and hundreds of videos about the JonBenet Ramsey case out there, I've added to it because I think that there should be even more, especially now with this new movie coming out, which is going to make the Ramseys look like the victims. And there's going to be a whole new generation of people who don't know anything about JonBenet Ramsey who are going to see this film on Netflix that's based on a true story. They're going to watch it and they're going to think, oh, poor family, and how awful is it that nobody's been caught for it. When really everyone knows it had to have been the family. I don't believe it was Patsy. I think that we know for a fact really that she wrote the ransom note. That was her handwriting. It was definitely her that did it. And you can actually tell in the all the interviews, because obviously they did their rounds on TV interviews and things afterwards on chat shows, and you can see that she's drugged up the whole time, which is I think kind of normal process of grief for a mother or any parent. But I think she helped cover up what happened. JonBenet was garroted and had a fractured skull. So I think the killer was either John or Burke, and I lean more towards it being John, but Burke knows what happened. I think if it was, it wouldn't make any sense if Burke accidentally killed her, because apparently there's quite a few reports that he was very rough with her and he had hit her on the head with things before, and I think he was a bit of a problem child because JonBenet got all the attention, being the beauty queen and whatnot. But I think that the Ramseys are smart enough to know that if Burke had accidentally killed his sister, that they could have just phoned the police and said, or just phoned an ambulance and just said, there's been a terrible accident, and it would have been, at his age, at 9 years old, it would have been deemed a tragic accident for what it was. He wouldn't have been arrested and put in prison, and he probably would have got the therapy that he clearly very much needs, even to this day when you see him on TV. So I don't think they would have gone to all this trouble to cover up the fact that a 9-year-old accidentally killed his sister. They might have done, but I think that that's unlikely. I think it's more likely that it was John that killed her. And then they panicked, and they've gone to all this trouble to try and stage it. So that's my view on it. Like I said, it's not been an unbiased review. I think everyone knows that the family killed her. More likely John, potentially Burke, but either way, all three of them know exactly what happened and went to a lot of trouble to try and cover it up. So I hope this has been quite clear and helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.